In this third and final part of our discussion of subject-verb agreement, we will look at the remaining instances of problem areas for subject-verb agreement. The table that you see here is a listing of what we call the indefinite pronouns. The indefinite pronouns always take a singular verb, and I've broken them down into 4 categories. The first category are the one words. So we have one or no one, anyone, everyone, someone. Then we have the body words, as you can see here. Then we have the thing words, nothing, anything, everything, something. And then finally we have 4 other indefinite pronouns that are also always in the singular. Each, another, either, and neither. So what that means is when any of the words in this chart are the subject of a sentence, then the verb has to be in the third person singular in order to match and have a subject-verb agreement. There are a few indefinite pronouns that always take a plural verb. Both, few, several, many. Not too many to remember. So these 4 indefinite pronouns, if they are the subject of a sentence, then you need to use the third person plural verb with them. The problem area goes where we have some indefinite pronouns that can take a singular or a plural verb depending on the meaning in the sentence. These include none, all, more, most, some, and any. So to give you an idea here, let's look at a couple of examples. Most of this apple is rotten. In that sentence, what is the concept of most is one portion of the apple. So we use the singular verb is. However, when we think about individuals in a group, if most means individual people, such as most of us do not like rotten apples, then most is plural and we need to use the plural verb, in this case do, or do like. When it comes to problem areas with indefinite pronouns, the 2 indefinite pronouns that seem to cause the most confusion are each and none. Each should never cause any confusion because, as I said in the previous slide, each is always singular. So it's a simple thing to remember. Each is, each was. There's no other choice. None, however, is problematic because it can be both singular and plural. Now the thing is, none is usually singular. It becomes plural when it is intended to refer to individuals rather than to the entire group. So if we look at the noun in the prepositional phrase that follows none, we usually can get a hint. If the noun is plural, then none is also plural. Otherwise, we should treat none as singular. So example, none of that money is mine. In this case, money of that money is referring to no money. None of that money is mine. It's a single unit. Whereas in the next example, none of the applicants, we're looking at individuals within a group. No applicants. None were hired. No applicants were hired. If you look at it that way, no money is mine, no applicants were hired, then the confusion between whether you should use a singular or plural verb goes away. Another problem area with subject-verb agreement comes with collective nouns. Words such as family, group, audience, jury, team, government, choir are called collective nouns. They name a group. They're usually singular and take a singular verb when the group is thought of as acting together as a unit. The collective noun is plural, however, when the members of the group are thought of as acting separately. So let's look at a couple of examples of collective nouns in action. The first sentence, the audience is appreciative. Here we have the singular verb is, because audience, while a collective noun, is referring to the entire audience. We're looking at the audience as a unit. So we say the audience is appreciative. However, the next sentence, the audience are clapping their hands. When we do that, we're looking at the individual members of the audience and we're envisioning multiple people clapping their hands. They're not acting as a unit because clapping is an individual thing and people clap differently. Another example, the public is satisfied. Again, with looking at the public as a unit, and so we use a singular verb, is, and we're talking about the feelings that the whole public unit is experiencing. However, if we were counting individual members of the public, then we would use the plural, as in this sentence. The public are here in great numbers. By using that verb are followed by great numbers, we're giving the impression that we want to approximate or count how many people are there in the public arena. Now, some of you may be thinking the audience are clapping their hands or the public are here in great numbers sounds strange. And I would agree with you. Even though it's grammatically correct, it does sound strange. So generally, you do better to treat collective nouns as singular subjects because making them plural does sound awkward. However, you can solve the problem of not only the awkwardness, but also the confusion around whether or not you should use a singular or plural verb by simply inserting the words the members of a group when you want to use the plural verb. So in our previous example, the audience are clapping their hands. You could just insert members. The audience members are clapping their hands. And then it suddenly becomes clear that you're talking about the individuals in the audience, not the whole group. Or members of the public are here in great numbers. Instead of saying the public are here in great numbers, say members of the public are here in great numbers. And now the plural verb becomes obvious. Another problem area with subject-verb agreement is when we have a relative pronoun that starts a relative clause. Sometimes we have confusion as to what the relative pronoun is pointing back to. But if you think about the clearly looking back and finding the antecedent, there shouldn't be any problem. So relative pronouns, as you know, are the words who, which, and that, which, when used as subjects, take singular verbs if the verb they stand for is singular, and take plural verbs if the word they stand for is plural. Examples. Gary is one of those people who are very private. In this sentence, who is pointing back to people, not to Gary. So people who are private. Therefore, People is plural, therefore we need to use the plural verb are. Gary is a person who is very private. Here, who is pointing back to person. So it's a singular noun, therefore we use a singular verb, who is. Who is equal to person. And then the final example here, I removed the sheets that were jamming my washer. That points back to sheets. Sheets is plural, therefore we use the plural verb were. Another problem area with subject-verb agreement is with gerunds as subjects. When a gerund is the subject of a sentence, it's always treated as a singular noun. So some examples. Lecturing wears me out. The gerund lecturing, if you recall, gerunds are the present participle of a verb being used as a noun. So in this case, lecturing wears me out. It's the subject of the sentence and it's followed by a singular verb. Or playing basketball is my main form of exercise. Playing is a gerund and it's followed by the singular verb is. And the final topic that we want to talk about with regard to subject-verb agreement is singular nouns that end in S. Several nouns end in S or ICS, but they're not plural nouns. So you need to be careful with those. They take a singular verb. For example, news, physics, aerobics, economics, athletics, measles, mumps, ethics, politics. These are all singular nouns. Also a note about words that end in ICS. If you're referring to the subject of a study, such as a school subject, then the noun is like a collective noun, so it's singular. Politics is fun. Ethics is a noble study. If you're referring to individual attributes, then the noun is plural. My politics are radical. Her ethics are questionable. If you're not sure whether the word should be used in the singular or plural form, then please consult a dictionary.